again, students of math studies. A moment ago, we worked on finding the cosine of 5 pi over 8. The cosine of 5 pi over 8. I'm going to solve this now without using the, using the half angle formula, using it very, very, very quickly. Say, and then we're going to also find the sine of 5 pi over 8. And how we're going to do both of these is consider where 5 pi over 8 is. So, for considering, one moment. Hi, I'm back. If this works, by the way, you're going to see this video with that edit in there because this is a pain in the ear to make these things. Anyway, so 5 pi over 8 happens to be right over here. So when we're talking about the cosine, we're talking about a small negative number. So in terms of this structure right here of the nested radical with a 2 and a radical 2 and a 2 down here, we have a small negative number. Negative number, that's small. That's what just happened here. When it comes to the sine, though, the sine is going to have the same kind of structure. It is a nested radical and all of these 2's. And the symmetry of these is happening because these angles have even denominators. So that makes it such that we can use this little device that we're going to do here. So the sine of 5 pi over 8 is this number right here. Go to another color for this one. The sine of 5 pi over 8 is this number. Well, that number right there is exactly the same number as the cosine of pi over 8, of the cosine of pi over 8. And the cosine of pi over 8 is a big positive number. So it's big, hence we're adding, and it is positive. So notice the cosine of 5 pi over 8 has this structure with a negative and a minus. This one has this structure with a positive and a plus. That covers that. Now we can move on and talk about the cosine of 11 pi over 12. And once we do that successfully, we can talk about the sine of 11 pi over 12 also. So the structure is going to be that we have a 2 plus the cosine of 11 pi over 6 all over 2. And we'll have to decide whether that's positive or negative. One moment. Pen cap. And we're back. So the cosine of 11 pi over 6, let's think about where that is. 11 pi over 6, I'm going to show it this way. Imagine a unit circle. 0 pi over 6. Wrong. 0 pi, 2 pi. It's always true. Now if the denominator is 6, 0 pi over 6. 6 pi over 6, because that's pi. 12 pi over 6, because that's 2 pi. 11 pi over 6 is 1 pi over 6 less than 12 pi over 6. So the cosine of 11 pi over 6 is the cosine of pi over 6. And the cosine of pi over 6 is radical 3 over 2. Ah! Can you see my mistake? There's a 2 that's missing here. We need that. Because this is radical 3 over 2. 2 times radical 3 over 2 is just radical 3. And our answer is a little close to that, but we'll just make it a little small and we'll fit it all in. 2 plus radical 3. It's positive because it's that one in the first quadrant, because 11 pi over 6, actually it's a fourth quadrant angle, but that cosine is positive. And now we have 11 pi over 12 to consider this sine. 11 pi over 12, we think about the unit circle this way. 0, 12 pi over 12. 12, 11. So see the structure of going backwards a little bit? You might have to do that. If we were looking for a 7 pi or an 8 pi over 12, we might go, 7 pi over 12 is right. We go 12, there's 6, and then 7 is a little more. So sometimes we're going to add, sometimes we're going to subtract. In this case, we're going to 11, so we're going to go 12 and come back. Still keeps us in the second quadrant. We know that we have a negative value, and we're all over 2. Now, the thing that I want to point out about, actually, let's go ahead and answer this other thing really quickly, just getting this right. The sine of 11 pi over 12, the sine of 11 pi over 12 is, we're over here at 11 pi over 12, is this small value, but positive. So we're going to have a positive value And for this structure right here, it's small. So we're subtracting all over 2. Now, hopefully you can see that right here, we've got a question with a 12, and here's an answer. A question with a 12, whoops, and here's an answer. A question with an 8, and here's an answer, and a question with an 8, and here's an answer. And the thing about these that is going to be very useful for getting these super fast if you need to, is that if you take a look at the question here, there's a 12. The answer has 3 numerals in it. They are a 2 and a 3 and a 2. And the product of all 3 of those happens to be 12. What's 2 times 2? Times 2? 8. So that's kind of nifty. We'll see how that works when you see the next video in a moment. There are going to be some assignments that go with this, but if you have already found this video, you probably already found the assignments. To sign off for now, we're going to come back and deal with some tougher angles, even smaller ones or more obscure ones, in just a moment. Thank you.